Now, yes, let us be present. You say the word now, and we're going to be here. It's such a joy. I mean, just because coming in on the heels of Laura and unfortunately missing her workshop by catching the end, I'm just reminded of the presence that is essential to storytelling and in the Zoom thing, because Zoom has us zooming around at some velocity. It's good to remember our feet are on the ground and we're here on this earth. Thank you, Eric, for organizing this. Um, so I'm Jay Leeming, and I'm a storyteller and, as Eric said, a poet. Did you say strong? It makes it sound like I lift, large, heavy books or something, large metaphors. Um, so, thank you. So I'm going to do a workshop on poetry and storytelling. Um, I came to one through the other, basically. Just something really briefly to tell you where I'm coming from. I was entranced by story all my life, as perhaps many of you have been, but as an adult, thought of myself as a poet first. And so cultivated the habit of writing things down, as poets do, and then found my way to storytelling as well, because I was seeking a deeper connection with spirituality, with tradition, with performance and connection. So I'm a storyteller, but I am a poet as well. And again, yes, presence and silence, so important, so important. And poets, well, not just poets, anyone who uses language, we can lie in language, right? We can say my hand is a blue toy airplane, when in fact that is not true. So as storytellers, we need to think about how we use language. And language can take us away. It can also keep us here in a beautiful way. But before I get carried away, I know this is a Zoom gathering, but I'm a little curious. I assume most of you are storytellers. I'd love to hear from all of you, but that's not possible. So I think we're just going to do some sort of wonderful, jubilant, and slightly tedious thing of raising hands, I guess. Um, have many of you written poetry, let us say, per se, of some sort? I guess raise your hand if you've done some poetry writing. Cool. Cool. This isn't a test. I'm just want to know. I don't want to teach you stuff you already know. That would be over again. And then I assume most of you are storytellers of some sort, right? So maybe we don't even need hands for that. So yeah, so I just thought I would guide you in combining these two things because my practice as a poet has informed my storytelling, and it lives in there and has some pros and cons. It's a powerful force, language, and we need to be wary of it even as we are aware of it. So I thought, to begin and to quit babbling, if you have a pen and a notebook handy, please find them and get them close by. And yes, there we are. Lovely. All right. Could have a little writing implement display. Yes. And I'll play some Finding the Pen music just really quickly there. Yes. I see people shuffling around. Yes. Find that pen, find that paper. All right, we got it. I think we're good. All right, so we're going to do a simple thing. We're just going to be here together, all of us, wherever that here is, this moment we share. And we're going to write, but we're going to write with some focus, and we're going to write without planning ahead. If you are a poet, if you are a storyteller, this is something perhaps you've done. Does the language matter for poetry? Well, that's an open question. So I'd like you all to just take a moment and focus and write without thinking ahead. Let the words flow out. We just want to open the faucet and see what comes. We like to plan, but let's not plan. And we'll do this very briefly. Be present and write in whatever language you wish. And let us focus and let us go. Just let it flow. Little metaphor. Perhaps try to bring it home to some sort of close. All right, bring it on back there. All right then. Thank you for doing that. So we've just done something. We've made there was nothing, and there was something. And so it is. Out of nothing, something emerged. Words appeared. Now, perhaps many of you are used to this phenomenon. As storytellers, we do that all the time. We pull words out of the air, so to speak. We make language happen. We assist in language happening right there with other people. Poets and people writers, of course, have the benefit of time. It's a little slower pace, right? You get to write in the notebook and you can a little more time to think, of course, than when you are there before people speaking. So the techniques of poetry, Phil, get into my storytelling a lot. I've memorized a lot of poems over the years, for example. I'm sure that gets in there for good or bad somehow. The use of the voice, the use of silence as well, being aware when you're connecting with others or not. So there's many directions we could go, but I thought I would focus on metaphor and simile because those are skills which are easily translatable to the work of a storyteller. So a metaphor in English, right, meaning something where you use is, right, like my love is a red, red rose, right? My love is a red, red rose. You're not literally in love with a rose flower, but your feeling of love or the one you love is like a rose, is a rose. Simile is just where you use like or as. You know, my love is like a rose. My love is as a rose. So we don't need to get tangled up in those sorts of definitions, but it's this thing you can do in language, which you can't do as easily in visual art, for example, or dance or music. It's possible in that realm, but in language, we can say one thing is another. We can relate these two things. And that is a particular power all language has. And it can be used originally to explain something. If you have an experience unfamiliar to the person you're talking to, you can use a metaphor or a simile to help them feel and understand that. I had a job interview and I felt like it was like sitting in hot water. That's a metaphor. I was sitting in hot water. Or it was like a long, slow, a root canal, like a dental procedure. I'm using a metaphor or a simile to explain what I went through. I'm using something we have in common to describe something we do not know about. So metaphor and simile can also be used to escape, especially as a storyteller. Thank you, Laura. Good to see you. Especially as a storyteller and as a poet, you can use language to escape the moment, which is beautiful, also a little risky, especially with an audience, because you can get out of the moment. Whatever, he walked down the path, there was a witch there, and she was, I mean, you can get so caught up in your metaphor or simile that you lose track of what you are focusing on. My love is like a red, red rose. My love is like a confetti machine. My love is a popcorn dispenser at the zoo with zebras walking around. My love is the green moon when it is feeling purple in the summertime, and a harpsichord player is in the valley playing music about camels and zebras. So you can get carried away. Now, sometimes that is a useful voyage. Sometimes it can clarify. Sometimes it can bring emotions in the listener. But you can also get a little lost sometimes. So you go back to my love is a rose. So this is all theory and me talking, but I thought I would share a poem with you. A poem by the poet Pablo Neruda from Chile. And you're going to have to hold your breath for a moment or just breathe carefully while I figure out how to share my screen here. I think, oh yes, there we go. I think it's possible. The Zoom spirits are with us. This is a poem in English translation because I do not speak Spanish super well. Can you all see this? I hope. Yes, I'm getting some thumbs up. All right. Thank you. Valentina, hello, hello. Now I know you could do this in Spanish. Yes, we should do that. But I'm going to give it to you first because it's the language we have in common, it seems, most of us, in English. This is a translation by the American poet Robert Bly of this wonderful poem, Ode to My Socks, Oda de la Calcetines in Spanish. And I'm just going to read it for you. But pay attention to the metaphors and similes in this poem, which are quite remarkable. Ode to My Socks. Maru Mori brought me a pair of socks, which she knitted herself with her sheepherder's hands, 2 socks as soft as rabbits. I slipped my feet into them, as though into 2 cases knitted with threads of twilight and goatskin. Violent socks. My feet were 2 fish made of wool, 2 long sharks, sea blue, shot through by one golden thread, 2 immense blackbirds, 2 cannons. My feet were honored in this way by these heavenly socks. They were so handsome. For the first time, my feet seemed to me unacceptable, like 2 decrepit firemen, firemen unworthy of that woven fire, of those glowing socks. Nevertheless, I resisted the sharp temptation to save them somewhere as schoolboys keep fireflies, as learned men collect sacred texts. I resisted the mad impulse to put them into a golden cage and each day give them birdseed and pieces of pink melon. Like explorers in the jungle who hand over the very rare green deer to the spit and eat it with remorse. I stretched out my feet and pulled on the magnificent socks and then my shoes. The moral of my ode is this: beauty is twice beauty, and what is good is doubly good when it is a matter of 2 socks made of wool in winter. So, yes, there you have it. So again, this is a poem by Pablo Neruda in translation by the poet Robert sublime. Now, I'd love a discussion about this poem. I'd love a fiery, beautiful discussion, but there are plenty of us, so maybe I should just say that would be maybe complicated to make it happen, I suppose. So let me say a few things, just notice the metaphors and similes. Like, this is a poem about socks, but just count the animals. I mean, it's amazing. Never mind the fact that his friend, Marumori, is a sheep herder, but we get right away two socks as soft as rabbits. They're as soft as rabbits. So he's experiencing the socks, and we are not, but he's explaining them to us through things we know, such as rabbits. And then we get two cases knitted with threads of twilight and goat skin. A great example of a more escapist metaphor. Now, we've all experienced twilight. Some of us have perhaps experienced goat skin, but this is a little more outside. So we've got rabbits, twilight, and goatskin, violent socks. They are two fish. So they've been rabbits, now they're fish. Not just fish, but sharks shot through. They're blackbirds, and now they're cannons, right? They're actually weapons. His socks are weapons. And then we go on, and then we get this marvelous thing. My feet seem to me unacceptable, like two decrepit firemen unworthy of that woven fire. So I don't know about you, but as soon as he says firemen, I'm a little like, wow, confused. Like, what does that mean? Like, your feet are like firemen. It's a little bit like in a sport where you throw up a ball and then spike it into the goal, because he sets that up. My feet were like firemen. And then we're all left hanging. But then he says, unworthy of that woven fire. So now the socks, which were animals and were cannons, are now fire themselves. And of course, the feet go into the fire just as firefighters would go into a burning house, you know? So again, I don't know your reaction, but for me, it comes through. You know, I figure it out. And then we get schoolboys keeping fireflies, learned men, sacred texts, and then their birds, you know, to keep them in a golden cage and give them pieces of pink melon. These soxes, which were so aggressive, like cannons, like sharks, are now kind of like a little pet in a cage, you know. So the metaphors, that conflict doesn't make it harder for me. It makes it more interesting. It makes the socks, for me anyway, more diverse and fascinating. And then they're like a green deer, you know, that I put on. So I'm just giving this as an example of a way in which metaphor and simile can expand our relation to something, help us feel it, and also take us on a journey. And as storytellers, this is something we could use all the time. We can use. It's available to us. So I'd love it, Valentina. I don't want to put you on the spot, but since I happen to know you, my dear, hello. Would you be willing to read this in Spanish for us? Would that?
Sure, I'd love to.
All right, let's get it in the original. And I think hopefully you can see this.
Yes,
it sounds great in
Spanish.
Spanish. I should also
Yes.
point out, Neruda. Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Go ahead. Okay. Oda a los calcetines. Me trajo Mara Mori un par de calcetines que tejió con sus manos de pastora. Dos calcetines suaves como liebres. En ellos metí los pies como en dos estuches tejidos con hebras del crepúsculo y pellejos de ovejas. Violentos calcetines. Mis pies fueron dos pescados de lana, dos largos tiburones de azul ultramarino atravesados por una trenza de oro, dos gigantescos mirlos, dos cañones. Mis pies fueron honrados de este modo por estos celestiales calcetines. Eran tan hermosos que por primera vez mis pies me parecieron inaceptables, como dos decrépitos bomberos indignos de aquel fuego bordado, de aquellos luminosos calcetines. Sin embargo, resistí la tentación aguda de guardarlos como los colegiales preservan las luciérnagas, como los eruditos coleccionan documentos sagrados. Resistí el impulso furioso de ponerlas en una jaula de oro y darles cada día alpiste y pulpa de melón rosado. Como descubridores que en la selva entregan el rarísimo venado verde al asador y se lo comen con remordimiento, estiré los pies y me enfundé los bellos calcetines y luego los zapatos. Y es esta la moral de mi oda. Dos veces es belleza. La belleza y lo que es bueno es doblemente bueno cuando se trata de dos calcetines de lana en el invierno.
Thank you, Valentina. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Thank you, thank you. Wonderful sounds, huh? As storytellers, we are alive to sounds, right? And violentos calcetines, and then the en una jaula, yeah, in a cage. Bomberos, it's just great, Azul ultramarino, un trenza de oro. Yeah, it's great. Cañones. Thank you, Valentina. So that's the poem in its natural habitat, right? Now, Neruda was very open to translation. He said to a translator of his, an American translator once, he said, I don't want you just to translate my poems. I want you to make them better. So who knows if that's the case, but here it is in Spanish. So lovely, lovely. So again, I would say as storytellers, like what does this have to do with us in our practice? Well, the use of metaphor and simile, to get technical. Also the use of silence. I mean, this is really not what I meant to focus on, but in poetry, you can write down the silence because of these line breaks, right? Neruda wrote in many different ways through his fabulous life, and his odes are very skinny, as we might say. They're thin. The lines are very short. So there's more silence in this poem. He's in the same way, he's getting us to focus on something we don't usually notice, the socks. And in the same way with language, he's getting us to focus on these little words. One word to a line. I slip my feet into them, as though into two cases knitted with threads of twilight and goatskin. He's really focusing us on those things. And again, as storytellers, that's something, as you probably saw with Laura, that's something we can entirely do, adding the silence there. I guess there are a bunch of us, which is lovely, but does anybody have comments on this really briefly? If you have reactions, I'd love to hear them for maybe 5 minutes or so, or whatever, if you've got something to say. And I guess, sorry, I just got to get my hands on the gallery view here. Yes, I'm looking. Raise your hand. If you don't want to say anything, that's fine too. All right. Okay. I'm not seeing hands up, so that's fine. Um, but yeah. All right. Cool. Thank you for looking at this poem. Let me. Sorry, I'm messing with the screen again. Yeah, there we go. So this is something we can do as poets, as storytellers. And I frequently think I'm taking the listeners away from an experience, but frequently the metaphors deepen that experience in a good way. So now I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we're all going to do something impossible. I hope you're ready for impossible things. You're storytellers, so of course we need to try some impossible things. It's late over there in India, I realize, but maybe more impossible things are possible at this hour. Possibly. Why not? Of course. So we're going to do a little poetry thing here. A poetry game. Let us call it a game, for we will play. Yes. And like I say, just take away all thoughts of good and bad, for it is impossible. I'm asking you to do something impossible. So the first step is to make a list of 10 nouns, 10 objects of any kind, person, place, or thing. 10 nouns, you might draw them from different realms of the world, the natural world, the human world, unseen, the spiritual realm, whatever. So 10 nouns. We're just going to write them down, all of us, right now. Okay. All right, then. So get yourself a list of 10 nouns there, and then we're going to pick one. I'm not even going to look. We've got to pick a number. Let's pick 7, number 7. So circle the 7th one on your list there. All right. The 7th one. So now, Now we're going to explain the circled word is your subject, and you're going to explain it using metaphors, using all of the other words. For example, um, so my list here is foot, floor, shoe, albatross, tooth, Nigeria, firework, onion, train, and smartphone. And fireworks number 7. So this is poetry push-ups is what this is. I'm just saying. This isn't, we want poetry to come as naturally as the leaves on a tree. We want to be inspired as storytellers and as poets, right? We want to just have, oh yes, an idea. So what we're doing now is a bit of an exercise. So I'm requesting you're willing to go with that. It's like scales on the piano, but maybe something will happen. And you do some exercises and then you can run a little further than you could the day before. So we'll see. So to go back, so I've got my list here. Firework or fireworks is number 7. So my task is to explain fireworks with all of the other words. For example, foot. So a firework going off is like a foot of light, putting its soul down on the dark floor of the sky. Okay, there we go. I'm just making that up, but yeah, Nigeria is one of them. Albatross. A firework is like an albatross flying to the heights of the sky. Well, perhaps you get the idea. So this is difficult. Don't get me wrong, it's difficult. But try to connect the subject of your little writings here, which is the circled word, and to explain it. Just as Neruda took socks and used blackbirds, shark, cannons, firemen to explain the socks, you're going to take your circled word, whatever it is, and you're going to use all of the others to expand on it, to explain it, to describe it. All right? Is that clear? Reasonably so. As clear as this sort of magic can be. Yes, thumbs up. Thank you, Valentina. All right. So let's just take a few minutes and do that together. Oh well, alone and together, you know. And there is no failure. There is the trying is the victory.
Okay,
Yes.
I hear some audio interference, but I don't know where it's coming from.
I wasn't hearing that. I don't
You're
know.
not hearing it? Okay. Okay. Well, everyone mute yourself if you can. I've muted you also. There you go. Whatever somebody did, that fixed it. Go ahead. Oh, but Jay, you have to unmute yourself. Oh, the interference is coming from me, Jay.
I don't know.
Hmm.
All right, a little bit more. Remember, it's impossible, but you can do it.
Jay, it really is some interference. Any idea what it is?
I do not. It's a sound interference, correct?
Yeah, it just came on a few minutes ago.
Um, I don't know.
Do you have any other options? Do you have a phone that you could connect with for audio?
I could put a microphone in this computer.
Maybe try it.
Let me see. Hang on a sec.
Do other people hear what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead, turn on your sound.
Okay. Is this any better?
It's better.
It's better. All right.
It's
Well,
fine.
let's keep doing that.
Great, thank you.
Just put it down.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no sweat. No sweat. Sorry. The technology blesses and curses us at the same time. I should say, if you have questions about poetry and storytelling, we could also just entertain those as well. But I will leave time for that, and I will just finish what we're doing. Thank you for attempting this. Thank you for succeeding in this. Whatever you did, you succeeded, I'm sure. It's a stretch and it's difficult. And that's totally it. And but these skills we can use later in the heat of the moment to express ourselves more fully and with greater freedom. Just as when you stretch, when you do your scales on the piano, you can play more beautifully. But I would like to share some of these, and perhaps I'm looking at our numbers here. Well, first off, any was it okay? Was it get some thumbs up? It was not, it was okay. You got something out of it, hopefully. We'll see. Perhaps breakout rooms would be good, Eric, just briefly, so we can share how this went among ourselves. But maybe we could hear from one or two folks first, just to see how it is. Rachel Greenstein is like a flower in bloom. You're ready. I could tell us. Let's hear just from you.
It was a lot of fun. I'm not saying it makes any sense, but it was just so much fun. So, Iris, eyes closed, locked like a Yale lock, not a petunia, open in the morning, on a wagon wheel rolling inside a wagon, crab-like, side to side. Iris and petunia, sandwiched together, flowers. Flowers, a term robbed of individuality, a noun wrapped in a shawl of many colors, like iris and petunia, crashing cymbals and drums, performing on a bandstand, boisterous and vigorous, or sunning themselves like juicy figs dangling from a fig leaf, crowing, crowned like a Hanukkah menorah, lit by the sun, fading at sunset.
Wonderful. Thank you. So you had Iris as your, yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. So you got to compare an iris to crashing cymbals, you know, which is great. So thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Yes. Clearly we don't have time for everyone, of course, but if there's someone else who wants to share a little bit, thank you, Rachel, for that. That was great. And you could also share just 1 or 2 lines, of course, if you're feeling like that. Yes, Kala, please. I'm sorry, my glasses aren't on. There's the list. Kala, please.
Oh, wait, I put them in rooms by mistake. I'll call them back. I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all
I'm
right.
calling them right back now. Close all rooms in 10 seconds.
You're so good at the magic, Eric. It happens when you just think it.
Yeah, well, that's a good way to say it. I'm sorry, everybody. I put you in rooms by mistake. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jay. They're all back.
Okay, cool. We get whisked around, don't we? Thank you. Kala, please share what you had to share.
Sure. Well, this is really my first time, and I'm not a poet, but I always like to put myself in positions where I'm not comfortable so that I can learn and grow. The 10 nouns that you asked me to write, I just quickly put down things that I really like. So I've got rose, lily, daisy, parrot, hummingbird, ice cream, cake, chocolate, and Portland, Oregon. It's my happy place. So, and my noun, which I circled, was ice cream, the 7th one that you said. So I started writing ice cream. Is like the early morning dewdrops on the petals of daisies, is as soft as the petals of the rose, is like the pure happiness of watching a lily bloom. Ice cream could be white like a lily, or could be colorful like a parrot. It could be like the caress of the soft drizzle of Portland rain. And I didn't finish the last 2.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kala. That was great. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, and I would point out, interesting, I didn't really ask you to do this. Well, the more various our things we can compare it to, the more interesting it is. I guess, well, let me put it this way. You had 3 flowers there, because they're your favorite things, which is great, you know. But again, if you have things from wildly different realms, you know, from government, from medicine, from natural history, it increases the amount of colors in on your palette, basically. Again, speaking as a storyteller, you know. So you're describing something in a story, you know, the man came to the cauldron and it was like, you know, if you can draw from many different realms, that is helpful, you know, something. So also, of course, just one little note. Oh, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, I understand that perfectly. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, Kala. That was great. Thank you for showing us how you can courageously go into things we're not comfortable with. May we all have that courage, you know. I'm probably too comfortable here. I should go study something else, like investment economics and something. Anyway, all right. Somebody else want to share. We don't have all day, of course, but if there's another one, Gustavo, I see your hand there.
Well, actually, I first I wrote them in Spanish, and then I took them in English. So my words are doll, muñeca, doll, lemon, limón, hoja, that's leaf, chaleco, vest, albóndiga, meatball, conejo, tigre, that was the seventh word, peine, comb, florero, vase, and león, lion. It was crazy. So I just made this. Tiger has the best of stripes, not green as leaves, not the green as leaves, nor acid as a lime. Looking for its victims, maybe a white rabbit. He combs the forest, looking for its victims, maybe a white rabbit. Yeah, that's it, all the thing that's made.
Thank you. Thank you, Gustavo. That's
And also meat, not green as leaves, but vivid as a meatball.
Yeah.
His eyes, its eyes. This. Okay.
Terrific.
So
Lovely, Gustavo. Lovely. Thank you so much for sharing. Also, I would point out your own life experience becomes material for this. For example, if you are a carpenter who works with wood, you might be very good then at using metaphors involving wood, saws, nails, things of that sort. Each of us has a unique experience of life, which is so beautiful. And so we can bring that experience to this. And what is more, if we want to expand our vocabulary, expand our sensations and things we can communicate, perhaps we should do something along the lines of what Kala was doing, go into realms unfamiliar to us. And then we experience what it is like to eat, octopus, for example, and then we can use that another time and describe it. It was like eating octopus because we've actually perceived it. So your life becomes a vehicle, a means by which to explore things, sensations, feelings, which then can become metaphors in your work, whether you're a poet or a storyteller. All right, now I think actually the breakout rooms are quite valuable, really. So Eric, I hate to be doing this again, but on Zoom, it is nice to connect, and if you haven't done this all day, so why don't we, I'm just looking at our group here, perhaps it would be valuable just to share really briefly in breakout. I'm seeing 24 people. Yeah. I don't know. Is that a good idea? Breakout rooms, yes. No,
Yes,
I don't
let's
know.
try.
All right, let's try it.
Here
So
we
we'll
go.
do small breakout rooms of maybe, I guess, 3, huh?
No, I'm
Just to
putting them in
connect.
2, groups of 2.
All right, well, 3 is a little better, but don't trouble yourself if it's really complicated.
It's groups of 2, but only people who have their cameras on.
All right, then. So if you wish to be in a breakout room, turn your camera on, I suppose.
You want
right,
groups
Eric?
of 3, I can do it. Did you want groups of 3?
Let's do groups of 3, yeah.
Okay, just a minute.
Thank you you do so much to make this festival happen. My mind,
Mhm.
I get tired just thinking of it, but you've
Mhm.
succeeded, so thank you. So we will just spend briefly, I'd say, let's give it, well, we like to visit, let's say 10 minutes, maybe, is that too long? And just share 10 minutes and share what you've written, and feel free to share something of your practice as in poetry or storytelling as well. So
Okay, here we go.
here we go. Thank you, Eric.
My phone. How many
Anything,
minutes
Eric?
is it gonna be?
What'd you say?
How many minutes?
Let's make it 10 total.
So it's been
That's all right.
about 2, so about 8 more.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Thank you for doing that, Eric. Sorry to go back and forth there, but
Actually, one or 2 rooms had to have 4.
yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Ba-bum. All right. I hope this is going well for you, Eric. You probably don't even know you're so busy, but
Mhm.
okay.
You questioned me calling you a strong poet.
No, that's good. That's good.
You're a strong individual.
All right. Thank you. I guess some amount of humility seems appropriate as the leader of anything, but maybe I'm wrong in that. I wish I'd gotten to Laura's workshop. I will listen to the recording. All right, now I see some screens. Jeff is here. Hello, Jeff. Are we in the same room? Yes. All right. Not join. Jeff, do you want to share anything you wrote, or how'd that go for you?
This is the day I don't write.
Ah, yes. Are
This
there
is the
many
day
such
that my
days?
day started out at 18 degrees and it will end at 64. I have arthritic hands. I don't write.
Hmm.
If I can't do it verbally, I don't do it.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Are you telling stories today?
I don't know that there's ever a time I don't tell stories.
Yeah. All right. All right. That's good to hear. Good to hear. Where are you
But
at
then
in the world?
I never realized that storytelling and poetry weren't the same thing.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say they're the same thing, but I'd say they're related.
In my tradition, they are.
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
In my tradition, there is absolutely no difference between poetry and storytelling. All of my gigs are a mix of both.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And where are you located in the world, Jeff?
In the middle of the country.
Uh-huh. Gotcha. Cool.
I'm in Missouri.
Yeah, yeah. Have you been telling stories a long time?
Half a century.
Wow. Way to go. That's inspiring.
But Jeff's tradition is Celtic.
Hmm. Wonderful. Wonderful. And so you would say poetry and storytelling for you are the same.
They're one and the same. In fact,
Right.
actually, my official title within Bardic Circle is Oleg, which basically translates into a PhD of poetry.
Sure, sure, sure.
We don't make any differential between, and actually, most of our performing was originally done poetically rather than story. But a poem is a story.
Sure, sure. Do you tell stories of the Fianna?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, yeah. Have you got
Though
a
I
favorite?
actually prefer the Red Branch.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yes, the Red Branch is wonderful. There's a fairly recent translation that's quite good. You probably know it. I've got it around by Siobhan, I believe, someone. Anyway, yeah. I look up because there's a book.
That's a good translation, but I tend to use the Lady Gregory.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
When she translated, she used a rather obscure English dialect, an Irish English dialect,
Mm-hmm.
that she felt most closely approximated what it would actually sound like in proper Gaelic.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Her notes are very
I tend to use it because it's in that dialect, so you get more of a feel for it from the way it would have sounded originally.
good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Her notes are very good too, in general. I find so. Yeah, yeah. Well, here's a question, just because we're both sitting here. John Matthews, what do you think? Like he's written about Taliesin, for example, and Caitlin Matthews. Do you get much from his work, or is it a little too hopeful and not grounded enough? Do you know that guy, John Matthews?
Actually, I do.
Yeah, yeah.
It's slightly different perspective.
Yeah.
But then I personally think that people make stuff way too complicated. They make it way harder than what it needs to be. There's a local storyteller that has tried to tell Taliation in Isolde for over 25 years. She hadn't figured out how to tell it. And unfortunately, in a workshop with her one time, it slipped out. I was thinking it, didn't realize I was saying it. I said, have you tried opening your mouth? And it's like, speak. It's a great story. It will tell itself. If you start it, it will finish the job. Yeah. You know, sometimes we make things way harder than they need to be.
Sure. I love that story for its wild way of moving, you know. It swims and jumps wonderfully around, you know. Just like the 3 drops of inspiration of potion, you know. Cool. Oof. I think I've heard a version by Hugh Lupton, the English poet that was good years ago. He's very
I don't think I've seen it.
Yeah, he's a man of about your years, probably, and he's also been telling for a long time. Lupton. I think it was a while ago. I've seen more recent things he's done of Greek stories, but he's done a lot of.
Well, I'm probably way older because I have a friend I used to do things with who. There's an old tradition in Scotland that you're as old as your oldest story. And I tell dinosaur stories. So he always maintained I was the oldest person he'd ever met.
Gotcha, yes. Yeah, that puts you at about 65 million years, I think, you know, for a dinosaur.
Yeah, that's about the period that I do my dinosaur stories from.
Nice. Cool. Eric, how are we doing? I think they're in the rooms and it's looking okay. All right.
Yeah, it's 10:31, so we have about another half an hour.
Great.
This is the last session of the day, so there's no time pressure. You can end whenever you like.
Okay. Well, I just have another poem or two to share and some talking. So, and then there's next weekend as well.
Yeah, 2 more weekends.
Oh, 2 more, right? Oh my gosh. Yes.
And Eric, while I love your festival, I hate your Sundays.
Sorry.
No, there's nothing you can do about it. But for me, this day started at 4 a.m.
Yeah. It's been a 12-hour day for me too. We've got to reduce it and monetize it. That's the mission for next year.
Well, it's marvelous that it is free as well. You know, I know that takes that's a lot to ask, but it's
well. Thank you for doing this for free.
Anytime, yeah, that's true. Yeah. I just told the Odyssey for 3 days in a theater here, 3 nights in a row. My voice is a little gravelly because the Yorkshire Festival is free, I believe, right? That one.
The Settle Stories?
You know,
yes.
Well, they request donations, just like I do.
Sure.
But no, I don't think I think that events are more ticketed there.
You know, when I started doing this in a group rather than just on my own, I had been told that all stories had to be 3 to 5 minutes. You could never tell a story over 5 minutes. And I was just horribly frustrated. I'm thinking of you saying that you told the Odyssey over 3 days. The people that I originally were in the group with would be absolutely appalled.
Did you? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, there are so many wonderful stories out there. How can you limit yourself to, and absolutely 7 minutes was absolutely the most any story could run. And I'm sitting there going, if you tell your story well, why can't you tell a longer story?
Well, Jay, did you use the oral formulaic theory of story composition? You know what I'm talking about?
I believe so. It depends which department of that you're talking about. I mean, certainly in all my storytelling, there are repeated phrases that come up.
Yeah,
And
the
in the
oral
Odyssey,
formulaic theory is that storytellers have a large reservoir of images and phrases and descriptions, and deploy them to fit the meter, to fit the rhyme, to set the
yes.
time.
Yeah, Singer of Tales, that wonderful book
That's right.
by
That's right.
Fabian Lohr. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you don't
Uh,
memorize word for word.
Oh, certainly not. But it's of a piece with all my storytelling, and maybe Jeff would agree, or maybe not. But there's certain phrases which come back,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the Odyssey, because it's a tribute to the source,
Mm.
like the classic ones of, the wine dark sea, but
Yes.
also a phrase like when they had put aside desire for food and drink. That
Mm.
happens in the Odyssey frequently, and
Mm.
just as when telling a fairy tale. I can say a line like that, and I get a half a second to remember the next bit,
Mm-hmm.
But it is my
Well,
own version.
and we see that a lot in the Celtic tradition too. There are key phrases, and in the Bardic tradition, we had what were called rands, which are literally one-liners that you use to put together song, story, and poem. If you've got to put together an epic song or an epic poem about a battle that happened that day, you don't have time to compose. You've got to fall back on things that are already there.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, is
So
there a
you've
written
got those, we have key phrases like, skin as white as snow, with cheeks like blood on fresh snow. Her hair is as black as a raven's wings. Those are key phrases that you find throughout Celtic poetry and Celtic stories.
Mm.
You even find that as late as Robert Burns obviously had some Bardic training, because a lot of his poems have the traditional Bardic phrases in them.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
There's a great moment in the written Odyssey where Odysseus is building a raft, but the written description is of a boat. So perhaps two versions were written down. That's possible. It's also possible the storyteller got carried away and a little excited and started describing the boat because, as you said, Jeff, he sort of had a poem about the building of a boat ready and in his head, and he just let it fly. But it's kind of a cool moment because it's a raft at the beginning, he builds a boat, and then it's a raft at the end when he sets sail. So, I mean, maybe it's two written versions, but in some case there's a little thing there. Yeah.
Okay, shall I call them back from the rooms?
Sure, absolutely.
Good. And then we'll have 24 minutes to process.
All right then. Nice talking with you, Jeff.
Hey, my friend.
All right then. Hello, we're back. Did we go anywhere? We went and we returned. Thank you. I'm going to play the returning music. There we are. We're back. Let me do that right now. I'm going to share the screen. Da, da, da. Give me a second here. Da, da, da. All right. Da, da, da. Bear with me. It's right here. I know. Okay. Here we go. Oop. Here. Da, da, da. This is a poem by Rumi, the Persian poet, in translation again by the American, Coleman Barks in this case. Let's see if we can get this poem there. There it is. Hopefully it's coming through the wire to you.
Excuse me, Jay,
poem.
your voice is very soft. Could you put more volume, please?
Got
Sorry.
And
I think-
everybody just turn
Yeah,
up
no,
the
that's all right.
volume. Everybody turn up the volume on your computer to maximum. Go ahead, Jay.
Whoa. All right, let's see. Thank you, Valentina. Yes, I'm a little closer to the microphone too. Maybe that'll help. So this is a poem by Rumi, the Persian poet, in a translation by Coleman Barks, the American poet. And it's just an example of metaphor and simile used, perhaps in a deeper way than we just did, but maybe not. It's called The Diver's Clothes Lying Empty. I'm just going to read it. You are sitting here with us, but you are also out walking in a field at dawn. You are yourself the animal we hunt when you come with us on the hunt. You are in your body like a plant is solid in the ground, yet you are wind. You are the diver's clothes lying empty on the beach. You are the fish. In the ocean there are many bright strands and many dark strands, like veins that are seen when a wing is lifted up. Your hidden self is blood in those veins that are lute strings that make ocean music, not the sad edge of surf, but the sound of no shore. Rumi was known for his dancing and for his poetry. He whirled, as you have probably heard. He danced. Let's read this again. It's a lot to take on here. One more time. You are sitting here with us, but you are also out walking in a field at dawn. You are yourself the animal we hunt when you come with us on the hunt. You are in your body like a plant is solid in the ground, yet you are wind. You are the diver's clothes lying empty on the beach. You are the fish. In the ocean there are many bright strands and many dark strands, like veins that are seen when a wing is lifted up. Your hidden self is blood in those veins that are lute strings that make ocean music, not the sad edge of surf, but the sound of no shore. So, in relation to what we just did, what he is speaking here, we could say, I don't pretend to understand this poem entirely, but he's talking about the self, the real self you are. And he's using all these metaphors for it, right? You are sitting here with us, but you are also out walking in a field. You are yourself an animal. You're like a plant. You are wind. You are the clothes of the diver on the beach. And then we go into the sea. It's quite wonderful, huh? Then you are the fish. So we move into the ocean. And then the poem enters the ocean and describes that and says your hidden self is blood in those veins in the ocean, which are lute strings that make ocean music. The sound of no shore. So this is another example of using multiple, and he whirls, he's an ecstatic poet. He's not a figure it out, blueprint of the soul type of poet. He is a whirl it around, more and more images. His great poem, the Masnavi, is super long, as many of you perhaps know. Also, I would point out there's one moment in here where one thing becomes another. Your hidden self is blood in those veins that are lute strings that make ocean. So it's as if he's saying my love is an apple that is a bird singing on a branch, right? He's piling one on top of the other, which is a little confusing, but there's a certain dizzying delirium, which I think is exactly what he wishes to create here in us. So, right on. So I wanted to share this poem with you. And if you have questions about poetry and storytelling, I'm happy to try to speak to them, whether I answer them or not. I also have another poem to share with you, however. Let's stop the share for a second. Stop share. What a cruel phrase that is. Stop the share. No, we're going to begin the share. So, if you have questions about poetry and storytelling, I would like to be useful to you. So if you know things already that I'm talking about, well, then I don't need to say them. So I do have another poem I could show you, but I would just pause. If you have questions or things you want to ask or bring up, please raise your hand. If you don't, that's fine too. Valentina, yes.
I mean, I followed your work and I admire your storytelling, your way of storytelling. Can you talk about rhythm? Because I think rhythm with poetry has everything to do with poetry and with storytelling, and I see you use it very particularly when you are telling your story.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, well, of course, in English, certainly, and in all languages, I would probably say, poetry, as we all know, so often is in a rhythm and a meter, and then it is can be free verse, where it is not in an established thing. The poems we read were in free verse, you know, the Neruda poem, both in Spanish and English, and the Rumi poem. Now, the Rumi poem in the original is metrical and was probably rhymed as well. And as no doubt many of you know, stories originally were often in a meter with a rhyme. You know, whether we're talking about the Odyssey or parts of Mahabharata, I believe, not all of it, but our other stories of the world, they're often in a poetic meter. But that's all sort of theory. So, Valentina, to speak to your question, in my own experience, probably what influences them the most is just having spoken poems to audiences and feeling the silence in the room and the reaction after. So, no doubt there's rhythms I've gotten from poems. I don't mean metrical rhythms like iambic pentameter, just the pacing of the words. Even that just Rumi, you know, not the sad edge lines, but it's how I read them because I've read that poem a lot. Not the sad. So a rhythm like that, it probably gets into my storytelling, I would guess. You know, they had a great feast, and it was on the table. There was a large bowl of flowers, and then a cake. You know, it's a similar thing, right? Not the sad edge of surf, but the sound of no shore. Not the bird on the chandelier, but I was looking at the melon on the table. You know, perhaps you get what I'm saying. So these things and memorizing poetry is a fantastic way to entirely but of the body and the voice, as is storytelling, right? So by memorizing it, it means it sinks in a little deeper than just because it's not just conveying information like you know, this is Washington D.C. is the capital of the U.S. and a melon is a fruit. You know, it's not just conveying information; it's conveying a song and something that can only be conveyed with sound and with rhythm. So if you really want to change your language or just deepen your connection to language, I would strongly suggest starting to just memorize stuff, you know, and it will definitely have an impact on your storytelling in some way. So cool, thanks. Anybody else a question?
Yes, me.
Yes.
Some time ago, this was the year of Vallejo. You know Cesar Vallejo? It's the
Yes.
year
Yes.
of, last year was this year of his 100 years. So we had to go out and work some poems of Trilce. Trilce is a very difficult book of his first book, and his many invented words.
Mm-hmm.
He invented words, and the poems are very like they don't have sense. Sometimes in sense you can find it in the first line, and then you find it here, and then you search. And sometimes you don't find the sense at all. And sometimes you find the sense after 20 readings.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very difficult. So it was a good exercise to even like that, even it's no sense to memorize those poems, because it was very and we did it with people that we put like this strong we told people through this canute and telling poem very, you know that exercise where we put well, you have to take
Do it too.
a tube, and then you have to approach people and say the poem in a very low voice on the people in the street. You can say like that, and it's beautiful spirits. And we did that in the street for some people in the National Library. So that was an experience. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gustavo, for sharing that. Yes, and and he's a marvelous poet, Vallejo, certainly, certainly. And as storytellers, we can take this as inspiration. Often I think Pablo Neruda, a very generous, expansive poet, very much like Walt Whitman in my country. And storytelling tends towards that type of energy, I believe, in my experience. Expansive, more is better. Now, it isn't always better, but in general, in storytelling, I can get into that energy, certainly, by just piling on more words. So I'm inspired by that. But then you look at a poet like Vallejo, who's just very tortured and exact in his use of language. And so, yes, studying his work can bring that sensibility. And even to certain scenes, you're telling a story and there's a very tortured moment, let's say, they're in the underworld and this happens, blah, 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 and perhaps you want to tap into your Cesar Vallejo self and not your Pablo Neruda self when you're in that part of the story. So that's another way the two realms can speak to each other, even as they are in some ways the same thing in some ways. Questions? Anybody else? If not, that's fine. Yes, Jeff.
Probably because I've spent quite a number of hours this morning and over the weekend doing storytelling workshops. But the Rooney poem to me is a storytelling gig. As you read that, I'm seeing an audience taking off. They're walking in the field. It's what we do with our people. That is a perfect summation of storytelling.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Yeah. I could pile more words on that, but I think I won't. You just said that very well. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Other thoughts? If not, I do have another poem I could share with you. But poetry has enriched my experience of storytelling so much, and it's really it's in my feel for language. And so as users of language, did you hear that phrase? I don't know if I want to say that. As users of language, as individuals who put themselves in a place where language uses us to say what it wants to say, where the earth and the spirits perhaps use us to voice its dreams and its demands and its little riddles. It behooves us to connect with language. And so poets, if you just open up that toolbox, suddenly the shelf of poetry books at the library or the bookstore becomes a whole little raft of techniques and worlds you can perhaps gain from. All right, then here's a poem for you by Walt Whitman, which again uses many metaphors to describe something. It is quite well known. Now, Pablo Neruda, I should just say, just as a bridge, he loved Whitman. He had two pictures on his desk, one of the young Whitman, one of the old Whitman as well, and also a picture of Rimbaud, the French poet, I believe. But enough talking about writers' desks. Let's look at a poem here. I'm going to share the screen. Okay. Sharing is happening. This is Walt Whitman from his long poem, Song of Myself, his lengthy and beautiful poem. And his book is called Leaves of Grass. And here in the middle of his long poem, Song of Myself, he gets actually to grass. And he uses many metaphors to describe the grass. Now, this language is old by our standards, so there may be some funny words in here, but just ride with it and we'll see. A child said, "What is the grass?" fetching it to me with full hands. How could I answer the child? I do not know what it is any more than he. I guess it must be the flag of my disposition, out of hopeful green stuff woven. Or I guess it is the handkerchief of the Lord, a scented gift and remembrancer designedly dropped, bearing the owner's name some way in the corners, that we may see and remark and say, whose? Or I guess the grass is itself a child, the produced babe of the vegetation. Or I guess it is a uniform hieroglyphic, and it means sprouting alike in broad zones and narrow zones, growing among black folks as among white, Canuck, Tuckahoe, Congressman, Cuff, I give them the same, I receive them the same. And now it seems to me the beautiful uncut hair of graves. Tenderly will I use you, curling grass. It may be you transpire from the breasts of young men. It may be if I had known them I would have loved them. It may be you are from old people and from women, and from offspring taken soon out of their mother's laps. And here you are, the mother's laps. This grass is very dark to be from the white heads of old mothers, darker than the colorless beards of old men, dark to come from under the faint red roofs of mouths. Oh, I perceive after all so many uttering tongues, and I perceive they do not come from the roofs of mouths for nothing. I wish I could translate the hints about the dead young men and women, and the hints about old men and mothers, and the offspring taken soon out of their laps. What do you think has become of the young and the old men? And what do you think has become of the women and children? They are alive and well somewhere. The smallest sprout shows that there is really no death, and if ever there was, it led forward life, and does not wait at the end to arrest it, and cease the moment life appeared. All goes onward and outward, and nothing collapses, and to die is different from what anyone supposed, and luckier. So, thank you, Mr. Walt Whitman. So I'll just briefly, I'll go through here. So the grass, this child finds the grass, right? And what is it? What is the grass? And immediately the first thing Whitman says is, I do not know. It's a mystery. And then he says what it could be, the flag of my disposition. So disposition meaning mood, myself, it's the flag of who I am, because Whitman aspired to be like the grass. He aspired to be kind of everywhere and to be creative and to grow among rich and poor folks, to be there for everyone. Not a special tree in a garden, not a special flower in a greenhouse, but he wanted to be the grass. So what is the grass? It's the flag of him, Mr. Walt Whitman. Or it's the handkerchief of the Lord, a scented gift and remembrancer designedly dropped, bearing the owner's name some way in the corners, that we may see and remark and say whose. Or I guess the grass is itself a child, the produced babe of the vegetation. So the grass is like a child coming from the great earth, right? And then we get this stanza with a lot of foreign words to us, or I guess it is a uniform hieroglyphic. The Egyptian culture had just become sort of known in America in the popular culture sense. There was an exhibition Whitman went to and was impressed by. So it's a language. The grass is itself a language, and it's common to everyone, he's saying. Broad zones and narrow zones, black folks among white. And then these words are names for people from different parts of the United States at that time. Canuck, Tuckahoe, and then a congressman, a politician, or a cuff, a more lower class person. And then we talked about rhythm. We get this beautiful line all on its own. Look how he uses the silence before and after. And there's no commas, no explanation. He just says it right there. And now it seems to me the beautiful uncut hair of graves. So death enters the poem in this way. And it's quite lovely, I find. And then he does this remarkable thing. He says, tenderly will I use you, curling grass. He's an artist, he's a poet using the grass for his poem, right? He's aware of that. And instead of just picking it up and using it, he's speaking to the grass and saying, I will use you carefully. I'm not just going to rip you out of the ground and use you in my poem just because you're there. I'm going to be kind to you. Why? Because you might transpire from the breasts of the young men. Because the dead are in the earth, right? And the grass comes out of them. You may come from old people and from women and from offspring taken soon out of their mother's laps. So babies who died young, because this is 1860 or so. And these are, children who died young. That was more common then. And here you are, the mother's laps, the earth as mother, But then it doesn't quite fit. And he's like, well, this grass is very dark if it comes from the white hair of old men, Darker than this. It's dark to come from the faint red roofs of mouths. And then he hits upon it. Oh, I perceive after all so many uttering tongues. So the earth is speaking through the grass. So once again, like our little game where we listed 10 things, he's going through, like Neruda explaining his socks, he's having all these ideas of what the grass could be, and they lead him forward in this way. I wish I could translate the hints about the dead young men and women. What do you think they've gone to? So then he just meditates on this death image here. They're alive and well somewhere. The smallest sprout shows there is really no death. And if ever there was, it led forward life, and does not wait at the end to arrest it, and cease the moment life appeared. All goes onward and outward, and nothing collapses. And to die is different from what anyone supposed, and luckier. So, in his consideration of the grass, in his relating of it and desire to explain or to explore the grass through all these other images which come to him, he reaches an insight, you know? All goes onward and outward, and nothing collapses, and to die is different from what anyone supposed, and luckier. So it's a remarkable little journey, I find. And if we were all in a room, we are in a room, but if we were in a real room, I'd love to hear what you all think and say about this.
Jay,
But,
Jay,
we are in a room of sorts.
could you come
Maybe
off
I'll
of screen
stop
share?
the share.
Yeah, there we are.
Yes.
Very good. Well, you really gave us some poetry.
Thank
You
you.
enriched
Thank
our
you.
storytelling with poetry.
May that be so. May that be so.
And it's wonderful
if
to
anyone
have
wants to get in touch,
yeah, you'll
I
put
would just say if
your
anyone wants to get
put your email ID and website in the chat. But it's wonderful to have a living, breathing poet, somebody who's really in the poetry tradition, and that can enrich our storytelling.
well, we're all in that tradition, you know, but I'm
Yes,
grateful
of
to
course.
sit in that chair.
We're all in storytelling, but we're not all in poetry like you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a great gift to my life to walk both paths. So thank you. Thank you for your good words. Thank you all for your attention to this. And I hope it enriches your lives and your practice. And please do get in touch if you have any questions. I'm grateful for this opportunity. I love these two things,
Thank you.
these worlds. And thank you so much for being here.
I liked how you said a palette of words. I hadn't thought of that image before. So now I'm going to make my words more colorful. Thank you.
Lovely. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you, Eric, for putting this together. Really
Of course.
it.
It's my duty. And I'll get the recording to you in time.
Sure. Thank you. That would be great.
Great. Okay, everybody. Shall we say goodbye for 1 week? For 5 days.
Good
Oh.
night.
5 days off.
Thank you, Eric.
Use it
No,
well.
no.
Thank you.
A long week, but very, very productive.
Yeah.
Great conference, workshop, whatever. It's been really good. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're halfway done with the conference. We've had 2 weekends. We have 2 weekends to go.
Eric, go get some sleep.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay.
Right.
Jay, please play us out.
Yes.
Oh, play us
Music.
out. Okay, sure.
Play us out. Okay.
Thank you all for being here.
Goodbye, everybody, for now.
Goodbye. Good night. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Jay.